So all of this is not a hook. This is so dumb. What a silly game. That was a little confusing, honestly. It looks really silly and childish. Looks like a 5-year-old drew it. Well, one of the big problems I'm struggling with here is I don't really know where I'm supposed to land because I'm going through the ground.
I'm fine. No, I'm fine, honestly. Dude, just leave it. I'd rather not talk about it. It's honestly fine. Hi guys, Mike from Cappiche Games here. If you're anywhere near the indie game dev scene, you've probably heard of Thomas Brush. He's the creator of Neversong, Pinstripe, and his upcoming game, Twisted Tower. With over 400,000 subscribers, he's one of the biggest, and in my opinion, one of the best game dev YouTubers out there. I've spent countless hours watching his videos and streams, trying to absorb as much knowledge as possible. In fact, back in March 2024 when I decided to give game development a shot, his channel was one of the first I found, and it immediately became a huge source of inspiration. So, when I saw he was about to play my game live on stream and give feedback, yeah, you can imagine the nervousness. So I showed a lot of seemingly negative clips in the intro, but was this a negative experience? No, quite the opposite actually. Both myself and the people in my life that I showed the clip to thought it was hilarious, and I personally found it super helpful. Before I go into more detail around specific feedback that led to changes, let me just balance things out a little bit.
I actually really love the art. I think it's hilarious. I don't have any issues with the art. I wouldn't change a thing. I'm being dead serious. Oh yeah, this looks hilarious. Ooh, shamrock. Well, that feels good.
How awesome is that?
You're a peaceful turtle enjoying the comforts and tranquility of your home pond when suddenly you're swept away to a strange and unknown woodland realm. So all of this is not a hook. It's the story. Now a story can be a hook, but in this case it's not a hook because it's not super unique. There's your hook. You're not just a turtle. You're a shell-shocking, gravity-defying, ninja-flipping speed demon. And who knows, by the way, why this works. This works because we're taking something typical and then we're contrasting it with something that's the opposite. And so in every great story, this is always the case.
So that's why things like this are so valuable. I've been focusing so hard on actually learning to make the game, and I treated things like the Steam page like more of a formality or even an afterthought. I totally agree with what Thomas says here. There isn't any immediate emotion provoked or any motivation for the why. I've since made updates to the Steam page and the game description, and I think it shows the game and story in a much better light.
What makes action in a trailer really, really exciting? Action in and of itself isn't fun. Not really. You can double it or triple its value by doing something. Does anyone know? Meaning. Imagine this. Start with the first 5 seconds of the greatest action you can show, or maybe the second greatest action you can show. So let's pretend that this is it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, drop. Flashback. Turtle is sleeping cozily next to his baby turtle in a pond. And that baby turtle gets sucked through the pond through a portal, and the daddy turtle cries and screams and does a backflip into the portal. Back to the action. Yay! Now all of a sudden the action is 10 times more exciting.
The trailer was definitely missing meaning. The format of immediately grabbing the player's attention with some action, but then bringing it back to the why and showing some meaning, definitely flows a lot better, and it makes it feel like more of an immersive game with a bit of a story, rather than just an arcade game that you hop on and play. The underlying story was definitely near the top of the priority list when I first started development, but it maybe got a bit lost along the way and had to be tidied up at the end. I definitely want players to engage with the story and hopefully take some meaning from it. I've since made a new trailer following this recommended format, and I think it's a lot better, and I know that if I were a player, I'd be a lot more intrigued to try the game out now.
Oh, I wish there was a sound. Every time we play a demo, I need to hear it. Do you hear it?
Another example of the finer details that I had overlooked that really adds to the overall polish and feel of a game. It's one of those things that's easy to miss while you're caught up in the development cycle, but it's often these little things that have the biggest contribution to game immersion. They're not immediately obvious when done right, but you can tell something's missing when it isn't. I added a small sound effect to the menu navigation, and it looks and feels a lot nicer.
Also, put me perfectly on the surface. Don't put me... It looks like I'm like going into the ground. So put my feet exactly on the surface.
So this one is a bit of a sore point, as I've gone back and forth with collision masks on the player object a lot. Because the turtle's feet aren't level, it looked a little bit odd having the lower legs sitting right on the line, as it made the higher legs seem like they were floating. I've now gone for more of a happy medium, where the turtle isn't floating, but is a lot higher up on the ground. I think this looks a lot better now, and helps with knowing exactly where you're going to land.
Transition sound for the closing black bars.
Another great point, and something that I've now added. I definitely didn't go for anything quite as dramatic as suggested, but opted for a more subtle but still effective transition sound.
Alright, here we go. Tito gets an overwhelming win. Turtle Run gets second place. Whereas Turtle Run, the art isn't great, but the music is fun, the art is funny, and it's just got a silly premise. There's definitely a hook there, especially if we decide to go with this here.
So we got second place amongst two great looking games, Freddy Farmer and Tito, which I'll definitely take. Even if Turtle Run had come last, the fact that anybody picked it amongst these great looking games is a huge honour and something that makes me feel very proud. I love the feedback on the art. If you've been following my journey, you'll know that art is something I've always dreaded and been terrible at. When I went into third year in high school, I was strictly told that selecting art as one of my subjects is not an option. I was hopeless. Even though the art is a little bit of a joke or a laughing point of the video, I'm still taking it as a compliment. Over time, I've managed to refine some sense of style, and although there's huge room for improvement, I think, or at least I hope, that it's kinda charming. It gives me vibes of those early SNES games that I used to play that have such a huge nostalgic place in my heart. I made huge gains when I started trying to add parallax backgrounds, and it's a skill that I'll definitely be putting a lot of focus on progressing in future projects. Hearing Thomas say that there's a hook there is absolutely massive as well. I always knew I was in a genre that has been solved for a long time and has a very saturated market. I wanted to stick with a platformer as I feel it's a really solid option for learning the ropes of game dev, but I really didn't want to just make another run from X to Y position and complete level kind of game. I tried to inject as much of my own personality into the gameplay and storyline as possible, and hoped to capture some of that feeling that my early self would have had back in the day. Seeing my silly little platformer, graphics and all, being played by someone I look up to so much in the game dev scene was surreal. He jokes that it looks like it was made by a 5-year-old. It wasn't, but my artistic capabilities are just doing what they do. But at that moment, all I could think was, wow, this is actually happening. Honest, unbiased feedback is one of the most valuable things a developer can get, but when that feedback comes from someone with Thomas's experience in the industry, it becomes even more valuable. I went into this with a huge amount of anxiety, thinking me and my game are about to get absolutely roasted by Thomas in his chat, and all my excitement for the journey ahead is going to be shattered. Despite those thoughts, I made a conscious effort to leave my ego at the door and view any feedback, no matter how brutal, as an opportunity to learn. I've already implemented a lot of the suggested changes, but my biggest takeaway from this experience is a deep sense of pride and gratitude. A lot of developers struggle to see a project through to completion. I get it. You start developing a game, and a few months in, you've learned so much that you realise things could be done so much better. Suddenly you're questioning everything, thinking, this would be so much more incredible if I just started over, or I have better ideas now, maybe I should work on something else instead. It's tempting, but if you're always starting over, you never experience what it's like to actually finish a game. You miss out on the lessons and pressures that come with getting something out the door. And honestly, that's one of the most stressful, yet rewarding parts of the process. I'm really proud of myself for sticking with Turtle Run, and I think this whole journey has set me up to see future games through to completion. I'm incredibly grateful to Thomas for his invaluable feedback. While there was definitely a fair amount of constructive criticism, it came from a place of genuinely wanting to help make the game better. And honestly, that's exactly what it did. I didn't expect to get absolutely destroyed, because Thomas has good vibes and that's not really what he's like, but the critique was spot on, and it led to a lot of last minute changes that have seriously improved the game as a whole. If you want to see the full video, it's linked in the description, timestamped for Turtle Run, and of course, if you haven't already, wishlist the game on Steam. The release is right around the corner, and I'd love to see you all on launch day. Cheers.